The corridor of the old sheriff's annex feels airless, as if the dust itself remembers what happened and has no intention of letting go. A single overhead bulb flickers, throwing thin light across peeling paint and filing cabinets that haven't been opened in decades. The lock on room 3A resists for a moment, then yields with a restrained sigh. Inside, time is still. Yellow tape hangs limp. Chalk outlines have faded into innocent floor grain. The air carries a quiet note of rust, paper, forgotten perfume. For a moment, the investigator stands without moving, not breathing, listening to the hush of history. There is no greeting from this place, only an unblinking silence. It is a silence that once held sound, footsteps, soft voices, a camera shutter, a stretcher wheel sliding across tile. And beneath all that, the sense of something left undone. Her name was Clarissa Ellin Hart, age 28. A portrait in an old personnel file shows her with quiet eyes and a modest dark coat, a librarian in a small town with a small salary and a private habit of collecting antique stamps. That detail lingers, stamps, a hobby of patience, organization, care. She lived in a narrow brick duplex near the edge of Lexington, paid her bills on time, mailed letters in careful cursive. In a handwritten note to a colleague found later, she described her work as a life of arrangement, making worlds tidy. She didn't go out much, didn't travel far, didn't stir commotion. The investigator studies the faded autopsy worksheet on the desk, trying not to let imagination paint sorrow where the report keeps to its neutral tone. The official record promised closure. It never delivered. The room smells of binder glue and dusted plaster. The investigator's boots echo faintly, a soft tap against tile giving shape to emptiness. There is nothing dramatic left here, only the slow, clinical hush of memory. The past stands like furniture, firm, unmoving, heavy with its own outline. He opens a steel cabinet along the back wall. Folders lean at slack angles as if exhaustion has touched even the paper. The old case number 94LXCA is stamped in red ink, slightly smudged, a clerk's hurried handwriting visible beneath it. The investigator removes the file, sets it on the desk with care. The pages whisper when he opens them, that gentle sound of dry cellulose separating, a rustle like leaves in winter. There is a photograph. A living room with a single reading lamp, a shelf of color-coded volumes, and a teacup on a saucer. Clarissa's body is positioned just out of frame in the earliest prints, then shown directly only in the required evidence shots. The camera captured hair arranged neatly, almost respectfully. The whole scene exudes intention of order. Dialogue on an old interview transcript reads thin and hesitant. She was quiet. Anything unusual? No, not really, just quiet. Minimal words, offered without argument. The investigator listens again to the room itself, noting the gentle hum of the climate unit and the faint ticking of a distant wall clock. He allows the scene to breathe through recollection. Clarissa's background was solitary but not lonely, occupied but not hectic. A person who made life symmetrical, alphabetized shelves, categorized envelopes, dated journals. There was no trace of disorder in her schedule or her choices, and that fact made the case confounding. Nothing in her profile forecast interruption. A minor entry in the file catches his eye, a single sheet from 1994 with a stitching note along the upper margin. Evidence item 12 not cataloged due to handoff delay. No follow-up signatures, no chain of custody continuation. One loose line that never found closure. He lifts it closer to the light. The paper is thin, nearly translucent, stamped at the bottom in tiny lettering. Return to evidence clerk, K. Mallory. The name slides like a pebble across memory. Mallory retired decades ago, leaving no public record of missteps. The investigator kneels beside the bottom drawer of the metal cabinet and pulls. Inside, sealed envelopes rest in neat rows, each labeled with date and exhibit code. He traces his finger along the sequence until reaching item 12. The envelope is not where it should be. A blank space lies between 11 and 13. No annotation, just absence. He exhales slowly. The mistake is small, almost administrative, but its weight is acute. He feels the hum of fluorescent light above him while dust motes drift like pale ash. No alarm rings, no dramatic revelation, only a calm shift of understanding. Something didn't vanish. Something was never given its rightful slot. He stands, returns to the desk, reviews the evidence list again. The description beside item 12. One perforated stamp sheet, foreign ink, no visible adhesive wear. A stamp sheet. Clarissa's hobby. A potential connection between her personal life and the final event in her home. A stamp sheet that should have been preserved, handled, noted. Instead, it drifted out of record, a ghost lost in transition. The old audio cassette recorder on the desk is brittle but functional. He inserts tape C3, a field interview from neighbors. Static, then a voice. She liked quiet patterns. What do you mean? She arranged dates on envelopes like they were part of a map. Words trail, the tape hisses, then silence returns. He removes the tape, sets it gently aside. His gloves squeak softly against the recorder's plastic surface. He can nearly see Clarissa at her kitchen table, sorting stamps with tweezers, marking catalog numbers in pencil. He sees her as precise, steady, interior. The twist nudges forward with quiet logic. A missing stamp sheet that didn't fit its procedural path. Not a dramatic revelation, just a misfiled artifact with the power to reframe context. The investigator senses it the way one senses a shift in barometric pressure, subtle, yet clearly present. He turns to the cardboard archive boxes stacked beneath the window. A breeze from the cracked frame stirs their edges. A coffee-faded label reads, Unprocessed Intake, 1993-1995. Box 7 is heavier than its peers. The tape on its lid curls from age. When he opens it, the aroma of ink and vintage paper rises first, followed by a timid hint of lavender, perhaps from Clarissa's home. Inside, neatly wrapped items fill the space. A stack of property logs, 2 photo negatives, a ring box with no ring, and at the bottom, a sealed slide case. Inside the slide case, the stamp sheet. 4 stamps aligned in a square. Each one shows an engraved coastal scene with a lighthouse and calm water. The ink is deep green, imagery delicate, perforation edges clean. Not circulated, not used. The investigator notes the absence of any postmarking or mounting residue. Untouched yet significant. A collector's item of precision, not currency. The slides include close-up shots of Clarissa's desk drawer. The stamp sheet originally lay beneath her journal. That detail wasn't recorded in the final summary report. The stamp sheet, by design or accident, had been shielded from air, fingerprints, direct light. It existed like a coded message only she understood. He examines the date printed along the bottom border of the sheet, 1954, a commemorative release, rare but not unknown. What stands out is the watermark, not government but private press. The sheet was part of a limited collector's run, issued not for postage but for catalog display. Harmless by itself, yet it anchors something unsolved. The investigator cites a note tucked behind the slides. Transfer copies scheduled for authentication review pending. No date, no signature, only the clear recognition that the process stalled here. He feels the quiet weight of missteps. A stamp sheet placed in the wrong box, a file line left incomplete, a narrative interrupted not by grand error, but by a small procedural drift. That drift kept this case unresolved. On the desk, he arranges the sheet, the slides, the note. Each item breathes a thin calm into the room. Clarissa's presence is not sentimental here, it is structural. Her patterns, her tidy arrangements, her method of making life symmetrical, all preserved in this final artifact. The stamp sheet is not a sign of conflict, not a sign of distress. It is a symbol of her life's order, and perhaps the key to its disruption. He lifts the journal next. Leather-bound navy, corners soft from handling. Inside, handwriting in soft graphite. Dates, catalog codes, brief reflections. July 3, Lighthouse issue, perfect corners. July 9, found matching variant at estate sale. July 14, keep alignment exact. No dramatic insight, only devotion to detail. Yet the last entry diverges. July 15, uncertain, check watermark again. Uncertain, a single word among a life of clarity. It lands with more gravity than pages of testimony. He closes the journal. Outside, a car passes on old asphalt, tires whispering against the road. Time has moved on, the world continued. Only this room remained still. The investigator looks at the objects and feels not triumph, not revelation, but the soft outline of closure taking shape without ceremony. He turns off the desk lamp, leaving natural dusk to settle in. Clarissa's memory has no crescendo, only a measured exhale. The daylight slides low against the annex windows, soft and muted, the color of old linen. The investigator remains at the desk, posture composed, gaze following the stamp sheet with deliberate calm. There is no rush to revelation. The pace must match the past. Clarissa's life was measured, methodical. The truth, likewise, must unfold without haste. He opens the tape envelope for the second cassette, C4. The recorder stutters, then stabilizes, more static than a voice. A different neighbor this time, slower, searching for accurate memory. She collected with intent, like each tiny square mattered. Did she share them? No, she looked at them alone, but she seemed at peace. The tape stops abruptly before completion. It had never been fully rewound. The investigator notes this too. Nothing catastrophic, nothing theatrical, simply incomplete. A pattern is beginning to form, not of threat, but of minor interruptions. One envelope misplaced, one review postponed, one recording unfinished. A chain of small, patient lapses that together built 4 decades of uncertainty. He returns the recorder to idle and shifts the journal back into view. Clarissa's handwriting is neither delicate nor rushed. It sits on the page with right angles, controlled strokes, absolute clarity. Her words do not waver even in the final week. Yet uncertain remains. He turns to July 15 again, this time reading the margin. A faint pencil mark catches light, watermark not standard. The note is circled, then underlined once, not twice. It suggests tension but not panic, curiosity but not fear, a calm recognition that something within her beloved order did not align. He studies the stamp sheet once more. The coastal scene is consistent, but the watermark inside the fiber is indeed different. It is not government script, not issued collectible text. It is a private monogram, 2 letters intertwined. H and V, the font is graceful, serifed, tucked into the lower right perforation line, barely visible except under angled light. He lifts the lamp, angles its beam precisely. There it is again, HV. He searches the case file notes. No mention of initials. No private seller registered under HV, no collector club cross-reference. Clarissa noticed it, but she told no one. Or if she did, the message never reached record. He flips to her address book found during intake. Names in alphabetical order, A through L filled, M through Z nearly blank. The investigator scans for anything with those letters. HV, a single entry appears. Hartwell Vintage, appointment cancelled. That's it. A shop name crossed out. Not rescheduled, not explained. A small card slips from the back of the address book, landing squarely on the desk. It smells faintly of lavender again, Clarissa's scent perhaps, or the annex absorbing memory. The card is plain, cream stock, thick. Hartwell Vintage Appraisal House. Lexington District. No contact number. No street notation. Just a name embossed subtly, the letters raised without glamour. The investigator searches the digital archive on his portable unit, quiet keystrokes echoing against the stillness. Hartwell Vintage ceased operations in 1995. No transition, no sale, no successor. Its chain of custody records were never integrated with county evidence systems. That gap alone could explain Item 12's detour. A single appraisal request that never formalized. A stamp sheet that entered legal intake without its initial paperwork. Nothing pointed to conflict, only procedural drift. He lifts the stamp sheet once more, careful to avoid unnecessary pressure. The coastal scene, once decorative, now appears almost symbolic, a lighthouse steady against still water, a marker of guidance, a fixture watching over nothing in particular. Clarissa collected stability, images of equilibrium, landscapes that did not change. Yet the watermark broke that pattern. He returns the sheet to its slide case. Dusk glimmers in the air again, forming quiet constellations. The annex feels less like a room of failure now, and more like an archive of paused intention. A voice returns from memory, the original lead investigator, archived in a 1994 debrief transcript. She organized life like a cabinet drawer, every piece labeled, nothing random. Meaning. She saw pattern where we saw plain. The current investigator sets the transcript aside. He notices his gloves have taken on the faintest tint of archival paper, a soft tan residue. He rises, stretches his back, then examines the evidence board reassembled earlier. Each connected line represents not a pursuit of motive or conflict, but the pursuit of pattern disruption. Clarissa's final week deviated. Rare stamp sheet arrival. Private watermark discrepancy. Cancelled appraisal. Journal shift from confident cataloging to single-word hesitation. Uncertain. It becomes clear. The case was never about terror or chaos. It was about the fracture of precision. The moment a lifelong organizer encountered something that did not fit, and the system around her failed to capture her final act of classification. He moves to the storage shelf along the west wall. A single wooden box rests apart from the others. Its lid bears the case code but handwritten, not stamped. Inside is a thin, unmarked envelope. He opens it. Inside, a one-page internal memo, unsigned. Clarissa requests return of Item 12, claims misprint, wants personal handling only. The memo predates her final journal entry by 2 days. She recognized the difference. She sought to correct it. The process did not accommodate her request. The logic lands gently without flourish. Clarissa was not lost to violence, not to danger, not to narrative severity. She was lost in the space between personal order and institutional procedure. A misprint led to an appraisal request. Bureaucracy stalled. She attempted to reclaim the item. Documentation fell out of sequence. And in that liminal space, the case dissolved. He places the memo beside the stamp sheet and closes his eyes briefly. The hum of the annex deepens, as if the building itself acknowledges the truth. Not bold, not sensational, simply overlooked. Clarissa lived by meticulous alignment. The world returned a margin error. He reopens the journal to her final line, not written in the same precise hand, but softer, fainter. Keep record honest. Not bold ink, not finality, a wish. He sits again, letting the dusk absorb the room. The windows surrender the last of their color. Night eases in, unannounced, unopposed. The investigator remains still, posture attentive but calm. He senses no triumph. The solution is quiet, grounded in paper fibers and pencil marks, in what remained unfiled, unshelved. The stamp sheet, its watermark, the canceled appointment, none of it forms a dramatic arc. It forms something truer. A woman dedicated to symmetry encountered a product of irregular origin. Her system recognized it instantly. The world around her did not. 4 decades of delay, born from a small, ordinary misalignment. He packs the items carefully, not sealing them, not labeling them anew. They will be handled in the morning with proper record, proper classification, proper dignity. Tonight, the annex holds them in their original silence. The investigator steps to the doorway but pauses, allowing his gaze to rest once more on the empty chalk outline, the reading lamp, the desk that once held her catalog tools. He imagines her gently lifting stamps with slim tweezers, humming a barely audible tune, aligning edges to grid lines, pursuing a life of order not because order was demanded, but because it felt like peace. Nothing more audible than that. He turns the switch. The overhead bulb dims, then settles into darkness. The annex, relieved of its vigil, breathes again in soft stillness. The night holds steady around the annex, quiet but not empty. The investigator remains just inside the threshold, reluctant to leave the room in complete isolation. Rooms that have held evidence this long acquire something like presence, neither haunting nor sentimental, simply occupied by memory. Clarissa's file, restored to sequence, sits atop the desk with the stamp sheet now properly sleeved, carefully aligned beneath museum-grade glass. He returns, switches on a desk lamp, not overhead light, softer, focused, controlled. Clarissa might have appreciated that, illumination without intrusion. He sits once more, gloved hands resting parallel on the table's edge. His breath measures itself, matching the methodical tone of the space. He removes the archived administrative log from the bottom drawer, something untouched since 1997. The pages smell of old adhesive and paper pulp, a quiet organic scent, like the inside of an attic trunk. Lines of typed entries march in uniform spacing. There, the Hartwell Vintage Transfer Request. A stamp beside it reads, "Pending clarification." No checkmark ever followed. No resolution. A stamp meant for stamps, ironically left unresolved. He traces the timeline again, this time aloud but barely above whisper. July 9, July 14, July 15, requested return pending clarification. The words do not echo, they dissolve into paper. Clarissa's existence here is not a tragedy of action but a tragedy of stillness. She lived carefully, moved quietly, organized faithfully. The system did not fail her dramatically, it failed her gently, passively, through pauses, delays, omissions, clerical hesitations. She was not erased, she was misfiled. In the audio log of the original post-scene meeting, a single exchange now rings sharper than before. She kept detail like breathing. And what if detail failed? It never did. But it did once. Not her detail, everyone else. He lifts the glass case again, angles the lamp. The watermark HV is subtle, dignified. No counterfeit signal, no coded stamp, no illicit thread of danger. Just misalignment, a collectible that did not belong to its category, a print run that deviated. Many collectors might never have noticed. Clarissa did. And she wanted it corrected. He studies her final house inventory sheet, tidy columns, straight margins, a near-perfect grid. Every collectible labeled with mint numbers, issue origin, year, surface quality. The Coastal series, though, is left blank, not cataloged, not placed, one empty square. Her last disruption. The investigator flips to her letter drafts preserved in the archive box. They reveal nothing dramatic, routine correspondence, polite notes to other collectors, brief thank you messages. Yet one stands apart, a draft never mailed, date stamped 2 days before the canceled appraisal. To whom it concerns. The Coastal set copy requires proper acknowledgement. It is not flawed, it is unique. Please handle with accuracy. Not alarm, not plea, just insistence on correctness. She was asking for classification, not resolution. The investigator closes the letter, places it beside the stamp sheet, aligns their edges. He feels the weight of something not quite guilt, not quite responsibility, more like inheritance, the duty to finish what remained unfinished, even if its ending is not dramatic. He stands and crosses to the annex's far wall where a corkboard carries decades of forgotten case reference cards. Thumbtacks tilt in aged angles, strings faded to pale threads. He removes the card labeled 94 LXCA, not discarding it, only repositioning it. It moves from unresolved to a plain, unadorned section at the bottom marked simply, accounted. Not closure, not triumph. Accounted. He returns to the desk. The journal remains open to her final entry. He reads it once more, not analytically this time, but with quiet attention. Keep record honest. Not solve it. Not pursue justice. Not uncover motive. Just honesty in the archive. Some cases end not with revelation, but with restoration. Things return to their rightful labels. He writes in the current case ledger, his handwriting small, deliberate. Item 12 located. Catalog integrity restored. Watermark clarified. No further procedural action required. A simple line, but finally correct. He seals nothing tonight. Instead, he places the stamp sheet back into its slide, the journal beneath, the appraisal card at top, forming a sequence she would have approved. Layered, neat, linear. Outside, a breeze shifts through winter-bare branches, a sound soft enough to be mistaken for turning pages. The annex absorbs it without protest. The investigator removes his gloves. For the first time in hours, his hands are bare, not out of emotional impulse, but because the work has concluded its tactile stage. Paper no longer needs protection, it needs rest. He sits back, breath steady, gaze lowered, letting his mind assemble the narrative not as discovery, but as reshelving. A woman whose world was order. A single anomaly that broke alignment. A system too slow to keep pace with her precision. Her case was never cold for lack of care, but for lack of correct categorization. Time obscured nothing, paper did. And paper, when left misfiled, becomes a kind of silent exile. He closes the final folder, its edges crisp even with age. He dims the lamp again, leaving one subtle sliver of glow across the desk, enough that the stamp sheet's lighthouse remains visible. A beacon printed to symbolize guidance, not destination. He looks at it one last time. A lighthouse does not move. It remains steady, allowing others to find clarity by proximity. Clarissa was like that, steady, consistent, orderly. But no apparatus came in time to reflect her signal back to shore. He stands, a final glance traveling across the annex. Chalk outline, file boxes, Cold air carrying dust and faint lavender, drawers now aligned. Everything accounted for, not celebrated. He switches off the lamp fully. Darkness settles not as ending, but as archive. In the corridor, footsteps sound against tile, measured, light, leaving no imprint of urgency. The annex door closes with a quiet latch, not sealed, simply shut in acknowledgement. No music rises, no sudden catharsis, only the certainty that, after 4 decades, the story is no longer misplaced among form fields and missing tags. The stamp sheet will be catalogued by morning, the memo filed, the journal stored under controlled humidity, the card returned to its system of classification. All pieces aligned, finally, not to solve a crime but to correct a record. Justice in this case is not a verdict or a confession. It is a shelf, a sleeve, a line of ink placed where it should have been decades ago. Mechanical, perhaps. But in that mechanism, something human remains. The preservation of a life defined by order, restored without spectacle. Clarissa Ellin Hart, age 28, librarian, stamp collector, custodian of small precision. Not forgotten. Not sensationalized. Filed correctly. And the annex, relieved of its 40-year pause, exhales into the quiet. The investigator exits to the parking lot's muted lamps. Cold air greets him without comment. He glances back only once, habit, not sentiment. The building stands calm, free of its backlog, its windows reflecting one small pin of light from the desk where the lighthouse stamp, for a moment, still held presence. No full closure, no epilogue, no triumphant note. Just integrity restored. The door locks behind him. The night continues. And somewhere, in a ledger that now reads cleanly, the word uncertain finally has its answer.